I'm Oliver, 36. For as long as I can remember, I felt like a guest in my own home. My parents always favored my sister, Tara, and I learned early to depend on myself. They treated Tara like the family star, every wish granted while I was left to figure things out alone. Money wasn't the issue. My parents were a typical middle-class couple who could have supported both of us comfortably. Instead, they poured their hopes, attention, and resources into Tara. When she wanted something, they moved mountains to provide it. When I asked, they found reasons to refuse. I still remember the teddy bear I got for Christmas when I was 6. I loved it and slept with it every night. The moment Tara saw it, she cried and demanded one too. My father took it from me and gave it to her. I cried. He said, "Oliver, you're the older brother. Give it to your sister." My mother agreed, apparently unconcerned with how that made me feel. At 12, after months of practice, I had my piano recital. I left 3 tickets on the table, one for each parent and one for Tara, and I was excited to see them in the audience. But they didn't come. Tara had a slight cold and they took her to the doctor instead. My teacher drove me home and offered comfort, but it couldn't fill the void of a family in the crowd. When I was 14, I won a state science competition. No one acknowledged it at home. That same day, Tara scored a goal in a school soccer match, and our living room turned into a party scene. Streamers, balloons, a backyard barbecue, and a cake that said superstar. I kept trying to get their attention. Honor roll, debate team captain, volunteer work, but it never broke through the invisible barrier that kept me outside their circle of care. Everything shifted when I turned 18. I earned a full scholarship to a top university 3 states away. I held the acceptance letter in the kitchen, hoping to see pride on their faces. Instead, my father asked if I really needed to go so far, reminding me we weren't wealthy and asking who would help at home. My mother bluntly said Tara would be in college in 2 years and her tuition would cost a lot. We couldn't afford both of us. I reminded them my scholarship covered tuition. They countered with rent, food, and other living costs. It became clear they were prepared to fund Tara's needs fully, but treat mine as a burden. I told them I'd manage the scholarship-covered living expenses, and I could work part-time, but received no encouragement. Only a flat "do whatever you want" from my mother and cold indifference from my father. They treated my leaving as a logistical detail, not an emotional farewell. The next day I packed 2 suitcases and a backpack, carried them myself to the bus station, and left without anyone waving goodbye. That was when I cut the frayed threads tying me to that family. In the dorms, every dollar mattered. I counted pennies for laundry and skipped meals to pay for textbooks. I chose my major intentionally, real estate, not for passion, but because it offered a quicker route to earning money. I took a low-pay job at a campus real estate agency, $15 an hour answering phones and filing, where commissions were possible. That direct link between effort and reward suited me. I watched senior agents, learned sales techniques, and practiced constantly. Closing my first rental and seeing a $200 commission felt astounding. Money I'd earned without having to apologize for needing it. I budgeted, saved, and planned. My parents called occasionally, as a formality, with shallow questions that never dug into my real life or accomplishments. Eventually, I stopped sharing. Vulnerability only led to disappointment. After graduation, ranked in the top 10% of my class, and with 3 years' experience, I went full-time in real estate. I didn't want to stay a broker for someone else. I wanted ownership and independence. I studied market trends, tracked property values obsessively, and lived modestly with roommates, a used car, and simple meals. 2 years after graduating, I bought my first house in an up-and-coming neighborhood for $500,000, paying $300,000 upfront from savings and taking a loan for the rest. I kept the purchase private. No need to invite sudden interest now that I had something they might want. That investment grew. I reinvested rental income into additional properties, apartments, commercial spaces, and even hotels. By 28, I had built significant financial security and a growing portfolio. Meanwhile, Tara struggled. My parents had taken a second mortgage to pay for her private college degree in communications, but she couldn't keep a job. She cycled through positions: administrative assistant, social media coordinator, event planner, never lasting more than 6 months, and my parents made excuses for her, protecting her from accountability. They never encouraged persistence or resilience. I had no plan to tell them how far I'd come, but secrets surface. 2 years ago, my father texted, "Are you free tomorrow? Come home for dinner." No warm greeting, just a cold, functional invitation. I almost declined, but something in me still wanted what I'd been denied for years: to be seen. That evening, dinner unfolded like old times. Conversation centered on Tara, new job prospects, dating, business ideas. I listened and asked the expected polite questions. Then my phone buzzed on the table. Tara, with the entitlement she'd always shown toward my things, picked it up and read a notification aloud. Contract confirmed. Hillside Retreat Resort purchase. 12. Silence fell. My parents stared. Tara's expression shifted from playfulness to shocked disbelief, then something harder and resentful. My father asked if it was real. I confirmed I'd bought a small resort property. My mother then demanded to know where I got the money. Tara accused me of keeping things from them. The mood in the dining room changed, surprise mixed with resentment. After a moment, my father's tone softened and became oddly approving. "I never imagined you'd achieve this," he said, as if he'd always believed in me. He patted my hand and suggested that, since I was doing well, we should move to a bigger house, an estate he estimated at around $2 million. It wasn't framed as a gift request at first, but quickly shifted into one: "It's only fair now that Oliver is doing well." My mother chimed in that a nicer house was deserved, and hinted I should contribute. Then Tara spoke, smooth and expectant. She'd found a dream property, a 5-bedroom Lakeside Hills home, with pool and theater, and she needed around $5 million to buy and furnish it. She implied I had the resources to fund it and could make it happen quickly. I asked questions out of disbelief. Tara presented the request as reasonable and inevitable, suggesting I was simply sitting on money while she struggled. My father grew impatient and accused me of being selfish. My mother said a few $100,000 from me would be nothing, and that I couldn't live thinking only of myself. Tara argued she deserved a fair shot, framing the ask as justice rather than entitlement. I sat quietly, then smiled faintly, and said something simple: "You've always assumed I owe you, that I exist to provide whatever you want, whenever you want it." The room grew heavy. I stood up to leave. At that point, Tara shot up, her voice rising. "You can't just walk away. Have you ever thought about this family? About anyone but yourself?" I met her gaze. "Has this family ever thought about me?" Silence. I reached for the door, paused with my hand on the knob, and turned once more. "You call me selfish, but have you ever considered who the truly selfish ones are in this family?" With that, I left, believing they would finally let me go. I was wrong. Their greed ran deeper than I imagined. They weren't only seeking quick cash, they were ruthless. A year passed, with fewer calls and texts. I assumed they'd given up treating me like an ATM, but they had other plans. Behind my back, they mortgaged the house and gave the money to Tara for her startup. I only discovered it after the fact. I was in my office when my phone buzzed. My father's name flashed. "What is it, Dad?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral. He sighed. "Oh, lol, we're about to lose the house." I froze. "What do you mean?" He explained they'd taken a mortgage and couldn't keep up with payments. I asked why they'd mortgaged it. He said they had invested in a restaurant and it failed. When I pressed for details, he admitted they borrowed $300,000 against the house. My chest tightened. "Please, Oliver, if we don't repay, we'll lose everything. Can you help us? It's just $300,000. We'll pay you back." He sounded desperate. I could afford it easily, but something felt off. I told him I needed time to think. He panicked. The bank had sent a final notice, he said. I held my ground and hung up. I called Jessica, my closest friend, and a financial analyst I trust. "Check my parents' house situation. They claim the bank is about to seize it." I want the full history. Later that night, she called back. She confirmed the house was mortgaged for $300,000, 8 months earlier, but there was more. Tara, not my parents, was listed as the borrower. Legally, she owned the house. I felt cold. They had transferred the deed to Tara right after that dinner when they learned how successful I'd become. This wasn't an accident or a panic move. It was planned. They'd created a scenario to pressure me into rescuing them. By morning, I drove to their house. My father greeted me with relief. My mother smiled, as if sure I'd relent. Tara lounged like it didn't matter. I placed a folder on the table and opened it. We need to talk. I laid out the mortgage papers. You told me the bank's taking the house. The truth. A year ago you signed everything over to Tara and borrowed $300,000. Their faces changed. My father muttered that what mattered was saving the house. I laughed coldly. My mother brushed it off, saying the money was already spent, and asking if I'd help. I leaned forward. No, what matters is you lied to me, Tara scoffed. You can still help. You have millions. My father nodded. Family should help each other. I asked where my family had been when I struggled through college. When I worked to buy my first home, they had never asked how I was. I offered a practical solution. If they'd sell the house to me, I'd consider buying it and letting them stay. The suggestion stunned them. My mother snapped. She hurled a glass to the floor and screamed, "You are no son of mine. Get out." My father gasped. I left without looking back. They had created the mess. I wasn't going to fix it anymore. A week later, an email from my lawyer arrived. A lawsuit for parental support. They were suing me, claiming I was legally required to support them financially because I was their son. They painted themselves as destitute and me as heartless. I called my lawyer. Preparing for trial was straightforward. The facts were clear. The deed transferred the mortgage, the loan documents. The debt was Tara's, not mine. Since I left home at 18, I had not received financial support from them. Legally, I owed nothing. In court, their lawyer argued they were poor and needed $5,000 a month from me. My lawyer presented the documentation showing the deed had been transferred, and the loan belonged to Tara. The judge reviewed the evidence and dismissed the case. There was no legal obligation for me to provide support. The verdict hit them hard. After the hearing, I walked up to them and said quietly, "This is the last time we'll ever see each other. I gave you a chance, and you threw it away." My father wept. "Oh, you can't leave us." I told him he had left me long ago and walked away. They lost not only the house but their only son. A year passed with no contact. I expected more schemes or pleas, but they disappeared. Jessica later told me the bank had taken the house and no one knew where they were. I felt nothing, no surprise, no regret. They had not been there when I needed help. My business kept growing. I expanded internationally, started a foundation for education, and mentored young entrepreneurs who reminded me of myself. Driven, determined, often alone. Then one rainy afternoon, Jessica called. She'd found them. They were in a small apartment across town. My father had suffered a stroke 3 months earlier. Tara had abandoned them after the failed lawsuit. I sat with that information for hours, torn between maintaining my breakthrough and doing what felt right. 2 days later, I stood outside their rundown building. I buzzed the apartment and climbed 4 flights of stairs. My mother opened the door looking years older. My father sat in a chair, his speech slurred and his face drooped from the stroke. We stood in silence for a long time. Finally, my father asked why I was there. I explained I'd heard about the stroke and wanted to see how they were. My mother accused me. "Now you care after 2 years of silence." I told her they had sued me, tried to force me to support them. My father admitted they were desperate and had lost everything. Where was Tara? My mother said she had left. The daughter they'd favored had no use for them once the money was gone. My father managed something that sounded like regret. "We made mistakes. We favored Tara. We took you for granted." It wasn't a full apology, but it was the first admission I'd ever received. I told them I was there to see if they were okay, and to find out if seeing them meant anything to me. I didn't know yet. I had spent years hoping they'd see me. Then I spent years trying not to care. I left a business card, my attorney's contact, and said simply, "Call him tomorrow. He'll arrange medical expenses and housing." My mother asked why I would help after everything. I answered honestly, I was doing it for myself. I didn't want to be someone who could walk away knowing they needed help. I said I didn't know whether we'd ever rebuild a relationship, and I warned them not to thank me or make promises. Then I walked down the stairs, feeling lighter, not healed, but clearer. Outside, the rain had stopped, and a faint rainbow appeared. I drove back to my life. I still don't know what will happen with my parents. Maybe we'll rebuild slowly. Maybe we won't. For the first time, though, I know their approval doesn't define me. Their love or lack of it doesn't determine my worth. I built myself from nothing. I am enough exactly as I am. And that truth, hard earned through years of pain and work, is something no one can take away.